Welcome.
Woohoo!
Woo! Yeah, this is so cool. This is me, but for our purposes, that's what we like. And over the course of the evening, I will probably learn many of your names, and I'll call you what you want to be called. So that's how that goes. Okay, let's start by asking who here has had prior instruction in verse scansion. I expect most. Yeah. No? Oh, okay, good. Okay, that's great. Because I was about to disclaim and say that I'm not here to unlearn you anything. I'm not here to invalidate anything that you've previously been told about verse scansion. Because my expectation is that as among those of us who teach this stuff, we probably agree on way more than we disagree. But there are tweaks, there are perspectives, and that's really important. That's really important. That brings me to the prime directive. Okay, that which sits above all else, which is that this is not algebra, which is a good thing for all of us, because I don't like math, and I'm not good at math, and you don't want me teaching you math. And what I mean by that is, I don't know whether any of you have had this experience, but when I took math classes, which I did only when I had to, it always frustrated me, being a unique individual, as are we all. It just bothered me that if I applied a formula to this particular equation, whatever was on the right side of the equal sign had to be exactly the same thing that he came up with, or that she came up with. Only one answer. I was always uncomfortable with classes like that. Verse scansion is not that. And I think when some people first come to it, they think of it that way. It's like, okay, it's a formula that we're going to apply, and it's going to require me to say a line in a particular way. We don't play that here. See, my task, if anything, is to help us to push this from the left brain over to the right brain. I want this to be more art than science. But because we're dealing with poetry, there is math to it. There's meter and there is cadence, right? So we have to attend to those things. All right, but not algebra. Get that out of your head. I don't want anyone to think of this as restrictive. This should open possibilities, not foreclose them. Okay. So, for our purposes, for the remainder of this workshop, when I ask you, and I want to get everyone's voices in this conversation, when I ask you to scan a line, what I'm asking you to do is not necessarily to speak the line as a performer would speak it, right? Don't act it for me. I want you to recite it, really emphasizing the scansion pattern, which we will get to momentarily. Okay. All right. Scansion is a tool. It's a tool for the actor and the director of Shakespeare. But it's a tool of the rehearsal. It's a tool of your text analysis process. We're using scansion for specific purposes, and then by the time we get to performance, it's there. You've done it. Then you play the play. I dare say that in the history of the world, very few people have gone to see a production of Hamlet because they couldn't wait to see how this guy scanned his lines. That's not the point. So it's a tool, but it's a very useful tool. And I'm going to try to explain why I believe that is so. Here comes the first trick question I'm going to ask you. There'll be a few. Okay, here's the hypothetical. You live in London in 1604. I didn't pick that date randomly. You live in London in 1604. And you're sitting in a pub, as you do, and you're enjoying a pot of ale, as you do, and you strike up a conversation with the guy sitting next to you, who tells you that his name is Will Shakespeare. And you exchange pleasantries, and then, at some point, you say, "So, Will, What line are you in? What do you do? What kind of work do you do? What does he tell you? Anybody? What does he tell you? What is it, sorry?
Playwright.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that because it's completely wrong, and here's why. That's why it's a trick question, and that's why I said 1604, because so far as I've been able to tell, by going to the OED, which everybody should visit on a regular basis, the word playwright did not enter the English language until 1605. Okay? And when it did, courtesy of one of Shakespeare's contemporaries, a writer by the name of Ben Jonson, trust me when I tell you, it was not complimentary. Ben Jonson used the term playwright to refer to people that wrote for the theater but had no art, right? People who just kind of made plays, right? Playwright, maker of plays. It was kind of like, ew, we don't want to associate with that. Okay, back to our pub. You're on the right track, but what would Will Shakespeare, how would he have described his profession in his day? Anybody? He would have said, and his contemporaries would have said that they were dramatic poets. They were dramatic poets, and this is key. So we're dealing with the written output of the greatest poet, in my opinion, your mileage may vary, the greatest poet that ever composed in the English language. And he was writing for the stage. And we know that he wrote to a particular verse form, which is, we all know this one. I love that verse. I just love it. It's a little scary. This is the metrical form in which Shakespeare composed. Most of the time, you will find some examples where he breaks away from it, and I'm not including that garbage that Hecate speaks in Macbeth, which Shakespeare could not possibly have written because it's awful. Iambic pentameter, okay. So here's our root. This is our metrical unit of measure. It's an iamb. And here we are, what do I know about Latin? The penta, 5. Okay, so 5 iambs. And an iamb is described as an unstressed syllable followed by a stressed syllable. That's how you would write it if you were marking up your text. And feel free to write all over that stuff I gave you. That's how you would write it. Good done. There's a quick digression. Well, no, I'm not ready for it yet. Okay. So 5 of these strung together. Ba-bum, 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 ba-bum. So we know that this greatest of all poets was writing to this particular verse form. Here's why we want to be familiar with this tool that is verse scansion. Because we don't have to go it alone. Once upon a time, I was an English major, so I read a lot of poetry. And I came to believe that the poet's stock in trade, it's not necessarily idea content. That's part of it. But a poet gets to his or her particular goal by doing what? By ordering words and sounds. It's the associations and the juxtapositions. So when we look at a line of iambic pentameter verse, we know that this genius guy put words in particular places. We want to take his hand, and we want to let him guide us through the process. Okay. So, a line of iambic pentameter verse. 5 unstressed syllables, 5 stressed syllables. Trick question number 2. How many syllables are there in a regular line of iambic pentameter verse? 10. 10? Did you say 10? You get half credit. Who wants to piggyback on, is it Todd?
John.
John, on John's answer. How many syllables in a regular line of iambic pentameter verse? 10 or...
It was math, that's why.
Well, you have right.
11.
10 or 11.
Right.
10 or 11. Now this is important because I'm going to talk to you about irregular lines of verse. But when you find an 11-syllable line, that's not an irregularity. That's regular iambic pentameter with what we call a feminine ending. And ladies, I don't know what that is. 10 syllables, masculine ending, 11 syllables, feminine ending. For example, somebody scan for me, so we're going to put this pattern on it, the first line of Hamlet's best-known soliloquy. Who wants to do that? Scan the first line of Hamlet's best-known soliloquy.
To be or not to be, that is the question.
See, 11 syllables. That is the question. So here's your wild card is, out here in the parenthesis, is this last unstressed. Okay, yes. Now, I think there's utility for us in discovering that kind of thing, but that's a regular line. As we go in search of irregular lines, let's put these things into the mix. So we know what an iamb is. That there, that's an iamb. If I had this, if I had a metrical foot with 2 stresses, anybody know what that is? That's what's known as a spondee. That's a spondaic foot. What about this one? Stressed first. That's a trochee. So it's a trochaic foot. And if you find one of these are pretty rare. 2 unstressed. That's a pyrrhic foot. These terms are not essential. So we're approaching Shakespearean verse, and we know that this is the essential mode of composition. So the process of scanning is to do 2 things. Number 1, it's to make sure that we know what words the author wanted to be in the stressed positions, because presumably he could have chosen to put them anywhere. The other thing is that when we scan, we're checking to see whether maybe we got an irregular line. This takes us back to the original point, not algebra, right? The actor's job, and the director, when the director is working with the actor in rehearsal, is always, 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 always to make sense. You've got to make sense. Saying something because this is how it scans, if you're going to leave the audience behind, you're defeating the purpose. So here's the way I look at it. We want to assume, going in, that every line we encounter is a regular iambic line. Let's let the playwright have his say. But when you scan it, if you put that line and you go blah, 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 and something just jars your ear, then you spend about 30 seconds kind of tracking through the irregularities that we bump up against in Shakespeare on a regular basis, and if none of those solve the problem, you're out. You've done your job. You've done your due diligence, now make it make sense. Okay? I mean, that's always a default position. All right, let's get over to the right brain. Why do we think that Shakespeare and his contemporaries happened on this? Why? Why iambic pentameter? Anybody?
It's easier to remember.
Say again?
It's easier to remember.
You know what? That there's some truth to that. Yeah, I mean, I've always found it that way because it's a regular kind of it's like learning a melody, right? Okay, we can go a little bit deeper. I think that here's one. it's very close to the rhythms of spoken English. True then, true now. So, for example, if I were to say to you, today I need to go and buy some food, no one's going to accuse me of poetry, but that is a perfectly regular line of iambic pentameter. Today I need to go and buy some food, right? So it's familiar in that way. There's something else going on. This thing, this I am, my father, may he rest in peace, was an MD. And he loved to talk about his work. He loved to explain stuff to me. Many was the time when we would be out to dinner and he would be talking about a diagnosis that he had made recently. And he'd get out a pen and he'd start sketching, anatomy things on paper napkins, right? And he used to talk about the human heart and the heartbeat. And he used to use a phrase, which I've never forgotten, which was the lub-dub. The lub-dub, which is the sound of the heartbeat. Lub-dub, lub-dub, lub-dub. That's what this is. That's what iambic pentameter is. This is the better answer to the question why these poets leaned on it. Because it's a pulse. Because it's a heartbeat. And even if the audience isn't aware that it's working on them, it's working on them all the time. And so, when you get a playwright as proficient as Shakespeare, and he starts goosing up the pulse, or he starts slowing it down, the audience will have a visceral response to that. And you can see it. You can actually see how this works on the page. Shakespeare's plays are a combination of verse and prose. Prose is easy, when you see it. It's sentences and paragraphs. It word wraps on the page. The verse, you get a very clean left-hand margin, and then the ragged margin on the right side, because 10 syllables can be this or they can be that, and that's the poet playing with the heart rate. A lot of small words go a couple of long words, and we're going into a slow down mode, right? So that's what I think is the main point of the iambic pentameter, is putting that pulse underneath the action, and then the playwright, working with it to dramatic effect. Probably worth reminding ourselves at this point that Shakespeare only invented the plots of, 6 of his plays, right? 6 of, I don't even know what the number is anymore. What are we up to now? 38? Is it more than that? It seems like every other week somebody...
37 plus.
Is it 37, including the 2 noble? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bunch. Of which 24 probably really were hanging on. But the point being that before anybody ever saw a performance of Shakespeare's Hamlet, I think there were like 2 or 3 other theatrical versions of Hamlet that had already been out in the world. People didn't come to the theater to see Shakespeare's Hamlet because they wanted to find out what happened to Hamlet at the end. They already knew that. They knew the story. They came to see what this dramatic poet was going to do with that story. What perspective was he going to bring to it? What themes was he going to craft from that thing? Okay. Regular line of iambic pentameter verse, 5 stressed, 5 unstressed. Again, moving from the left brain to the right brain. Not all stresses are equal, obviously. Obviously. When you're just starting out with this, if you're not really familiar with working with verse scansion, it's a good idea when you're marking up your text to actually number your stresses 1 through 5. 1 being the primary stress, 5 being the least important of the stress syllables. It's a pain in the you-know-what. But it's like long division. Remember that? Remember long division? And you have to show your work. Right? I don't care whether you can, divide 27 by 3 in your head, right? Write it all down. Okay, this will help. Ultimately, you will do it with much greater facility. Okay. Yeah, so not all the stresses are equal. I think I said before, as actor or director, I think it's important that we give Shakespeare the benefit of the doubt. Assume regular iambic pentameter, and then when a line tells you, when you scan it, and you go, that doesn't sound right, then we go looking for differences. Let's get an example. Let's get an example. Okay, on the first page of your handout here, we've got a speech from Act 1 of Julius Caesar. It's the one on the bottom there. This is the character of Morallus. Morallus, the first scene of the play. He's one of two, I think they're tribunes, right? So we got rabble out in the street, and they're celebrating some Caesar thing. And Morallus and the other guy, I can't remember his name, they're out there and they shame the townspeople. What are you doing? That's what this speech is about. And by the way, pro tip, guys, I mean, if you're ever in the market for a Shakespearean monologue that isn't done to death, it's a great speech.
I've been doing that for a month.
I mean, you've done it to death.
So none of the rest of us will touch it.
Okay, because there it is. Then you can't follow that. Okay, so what I want to do here, let's buzz through some of the early stuff here. This is pretty regular stuff, so let's hear some scanning of it. John, scan the first line of this.
Wherefore rejoice when conquest brings me home.
Okay, anybody? I mean, anything problematic in there, right?
Don't like the first iambic.
You don't like the which?
I don't like the very first iambic.
Wherefore? You
Wherefore.
like you.
Wherefore rejoice. Wherefore.
Okay,
rejoice.
okay. I'm not going to argue that point. I'm not going to argue that one because okay, it's defensible. Okay. Second line, please.
What?
Yeah, scan the second line.
Okay. What tributaries follow him to Rome?
Yes, but do it again and really get that rhythm in it right from the beginning.
What
There we go.
tributaries follow him to Rome?
Any problems? Is our ear telling us that that's a regular line? Yeah, I think so. Line 3.
To grace in captive bonds his chariot wheels.
Okay, now, that's a good one. Okay, now how do we fix that? How do we fix that one? There's an easy fix.
It's an easy fix. Garble, the second
Chariot.
syllable. Two syllables.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Now I don't think I would opt for garble. Here's what I would prefer. Elide. We're going to use elision. To grace in captive bonds his chariot wheels. And you can actually do it and give that middle syllable its due. But we have to make sure that we get 3 into 2. Everyone got to get that? To grace in captive bonds his chariot wheels. Right? Because if we go chariot wheels, then we got a problem. Then the ear should be going, danger, danger, audiences.
But it feels like there's some motion in the word chariot when you do that too.
That's good. That's good.
So
Okay.
it's very intentional, I feel like.
Okay, you get line 4.
You blocks, you stones, you worse than senseless things.
Beautiful. Perfectly regular.
O you hard hearts, you cruel men of Rome.
Now that's correct. That's correct. Now, as English speakers in the, what are we now, the early 21st century, we like cruel. That's not right. Cruel is correct, and Shakespeare will tell you when it needs 2 syllables. In fact, for you fans of the International Phonetic Alphabet, that's a diphthong. Ua, and that's what's in that word. That's 2 vowels voiced continuously. You cruel men, you cruel men of Rome. That's right.
Knew you not Pompey, many a time and all.
Oh boy. Okay, this one's gonna Impressive stuff. Yeah, wow. Do it again, and you just put the scansion rhythm on it very distinctly.
Okay. Do you not pump the men time and off?
Yeah, okay, so you kind of instinctively fixed by getting many of the one beat. That's a tough one. That's a tough one. Yeah, I don't see how you deal. Do you not pump beat? That's more regular, that up to that point.
Many a time and off.
Many, I think
Many a time.
many a time and
You
off.
pump many a time and off. That's what you're suggesting. Okay. Okay. I'm going to fast forward a little bit. No, I want Todd to do one first. Okay, you've got have you.
Have you climbed up to walls and back till next?
Perfectly regular. Perfectly regular. Okay. Now here's where we're going to run into an irregular line. Third line from the bottom of this speech. Well, let's look at the one before. Let's look at the fourth line from the bottom. We actually got to go to the fifth line from the bottom because I want to get the entire thought. And do you now strew flowers in his way? And do you now strew flowers in his way? Right? That comes in triumph over Pompey's blood. Be gone. Comes in triumph over Pompey's blood. Yeah, see now your editor here, now I assume you typed this, but you went directly from the printed
I
text.
did not. I sent it to Stephen.
Pulled it from the MIT.
Okay, I believe you.
Yeah.
I believe you. Now your editor's not done you any favors here. They try to help. They do. They try to help. But the line that ends with blood, that's a regular iambic pentameter line. So what I think would be better is to drop be gone down to the next line and leave the rest blank. What's that about? We see this all the time. We're going to see it in another one of our subject speeches. Let's leave that for the time being. That's coming later. So now we're to the third line from the bottom. Mike, scan that line.
Run to your houses, fall upon your knees.
Any problem here? Yeah. See, there's a problem. Your ear is telling you.
Yeah.
Where's the problem?
Well, the first
That's
syllable
right.
should be accented.
That's right. Okay, don't be afraid of this. Don't be afraid of this. Of all the irregularities that occur in Shakespeare, this is the most common. Trochee iamb in the first 2 feet. Don't be afraid of it. See, I think it's doing something. And this is the whole point of irregularities. When Shakespeare drops something like that into your lap, as an actor, it's like, okay, how do I make a character choice out of that? So if I'm right that the previous line should have been, this bellowing, be gone. And notice that those would be the only 2 syllables in that line. If it makes sense, again, editors, they try to help, they mostly do. When an editor shows you a line being incomplete metrically, it's very often regarded by actors and directors to be an indication that some space is wanted here. Now, I'm not asking you to count. So you wouldn't say be gone 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But it wants the space. And it makes sense when you think of the context of the speech. Because Morales, he suckers these guys in. Do you not Pompey? You celebrating Caesar who comes in triumph over Pompey's blood. Don't you remember when you were out in the streets celebrating Pompey? Many a time and oft have you climbed up to blah, 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 blah. And do you now? Do you now do this? Do you now do that? Do you now call out a holiday for he that comes in triumph over Pompey's blood? Be gone! And they're shamed. Then he comes back in with run to your houses. I think that's right. Run to your houses doesn't make any sense. It jars on my ear. run to your houses make sense. And what I would suggest is that as an actor, when you come upon something like that, it's Shakespeare indicating we got a beat here. Actors understand the concept of beat. A beat is when something shifts direction. We've completed A, we're going on to B. Beats can be accomplished vocally or with physical action. So when Shakespeare when he's riding that pulse, ba-bum, 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 and I think we've determined that most of the speech is regular iambic, all of a sudden he comes with this, at the beginning of a line. I think it's an indication to the actor, right? You're bringing something in now. Morellus has quelled the mob. He has told them why they ought not to be celebrating in the streets. And now here comes his prescription. Go home and pray. Right? Pray to the gods to intermit the whatever. Intermit the plague that needs must light on this ingratitude. Trocheiae. You'll see this a lot. Yeah. Who's playing sonnets tomorrow? Who's going to be in the sonnet? Okay, yeah, we'll come across this as well in the sonnets. I want to go back to the an incomplete line business. Because very often, now this one is an incomplete line that belongs entirely to one character. So if Morellus says, be gone, and there's that gap, it's telling you, use some time here. But very often, when you're looking at Shakespearean text on the printed page, I'm going to lose a lot of this stuff. Very often, what you will see is this. So, actor or character A, character A's goes ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. And character B goes ba-bum, ba-bum. You get it? You know what I'm talking about? Two characters sharing but completing one line of iambic pentameter. And you better be aware of it, because sometimes the totality of the line indicates where the major emphasis wants to be. Let me give you a good example. In the play, As You Like It. As You Like It? And if at any point I'm talking about a play that we just, that you don't know, just let me know and I'll provide some context. We're out in the forest of Arden with the banished Duke Senior. And he's out there with his, band of merry men. And one of them's not so merry, this guy named Jacques. He's kind of sour. Monsieur Melancholy, as Orlando calls him. He's got a very famous speech in this play. You know this speech? Right? How does that speech begin?
Hold the words stage.
Yeah. Yeah, where's the primary stress in that line? Oh. That's right. That's right. And you know how I know that? I know that because I know what precedes it. See, Jacques is completing a line of Duke Seniors. Here's the context. Duke Senior and his gang are about to have dinner. Orlando, who's roaming around in the forest with his old servant Adam, bursts in to their midst, sword drawn, and he says, nobody touch that food. I got an old man there who's like about to keel over. And until he eats, nobody eats. And Duke Senior says, we got no problems here. Go get him. Bring him. We won't touch a bite until you come back. And Orlando says, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I came in so rudely. I didn't realize I would meet nice people out here. So he goes to fetch Adam. And Duke Senior says, thou seest, he says to his men, thou seest we are not all alone unhappy. This wide and universal theater presents more woeful pageants than the scene wherein we play in. And then Jaques completes that line, wherein we play in all the worlds a stage. Now, because people know the speech, and it's a famous speech, and it's very often taken out of context, most people would land on stage. All the world's a stage. And, you know, it's not right. How do I know it's not right? Because Shakespeare, whenever he repeats an idea in close proximity, when he says it and then he says it again, he wants you to find the modifier the second time. What changed between the first iteration and the second? So when Senior says, this wide and universal theater, right? So that's already in the mix. Theater. This is it's like a theater. This wide and universal theater presents more woeful pageants than the scene wherein we play in, and Jaques comes in, and the new news is all the world's a stage. Senior, I mean, you're right as far as it goes. You know, you're referring to what we just witnessed in our situation. Jaques says all the world's a stage. So yeah, all is the primary stress, and you would know it if you took the whole thing in its entirety. Okay. Let's look at Hamlet's speech. Hamlet Act 2, Scene 3. Who wants to scan the first line of the speech? Hey, jump on it.
Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I.
Any problem with that? No, it'll
It's
work.
pretty straight.
It'll work. I mean, but you have a choice.
You can make the argument for O.
Yes, yes, you can. And here's what I'm going to say about that. These two things in Shakespeare, the way I was taught and the way I've always remembered it, is that these are vessels. These are vessels that can be filled with emotion by actors. You know, I mean, like, oh is never, it's never oh. It's never that. It's always oh. There's something going on there. So the line will work as, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I. You can do something with what, right? I mean, you could actually use what to distinguish from all the other rogues and peasant slaves. Like I'm more of that than most people are. Or you could really load that up. We've already heard this from Hamlet. What's his first soliloquy in the play? Anybody? After he has his exchange with Gertrude and Claudius in the court? Oh, that this too solid flesh would melt. And don't say sullied. That's wrong. Some editors put sullied. That doesn't make any sense. Something that is solid could melt. Not sullied. Sullied would have to be cleaned. They try to help. Okay, so yeah. So we've already heard this out of Hamlet. Oh, so you're not going to say, oh, that this too, right? That's gonna clang on your ear. Oh, that this too, right? Here we are. So there's our friend Trochee I am. Yeah. So yeah. So you could play, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I, or you could play, oh, what a rogue. You get to choose, right? You get to choose. Actors choose. Directors will try to help. If the director, doesn't get it, clever actors know how to get around that.
Oh, we have experience.
Mine have been getting around me.
Here. I cover yours. Yeah, all you have to do is make them think it's their idea. You can do anything. You can get away with anything. Okay. All right. So that was the first line. Okay. Let's do our round robining. So, second line of Hamlet's speech.
Is it not monstrous that this play you're here?
Good. Monstrous, 2 syllables. Absolutely right.
but in a fiction, in a dream of passion.
That's right. Okay, so regular iambic, but feminine ending. 11th syllable. Perfect.
Could force his soul so to his own conceit.
Okay. Okay.
That from her working all his visage wing.
Okay. That's again, I don't know.
Tears in his eyes, distractions in his aspect.
What do you think? First 2 feet?
Very
Whoa! That was inevitable. That was inevitable.
Todd, edit that out.
That was the spirit of William Shakespeare. You know, it's like that scene in Annie Hall with Marshall McLuhan. You know nothing of my work. Enough of this.
Some stage raising.
Just make the bass so much wider.
Okay, got it. Tears in his eyes, I think. Tears in his eyes. I mean, I think in his eyes doesn't make any sense, as opposed to where else tears are going to be. Tears in his eyes, distraction in suspect, right? And aspect. Yep. I know. I mean, we would say aspect, but you know, trust Shakespeare. Trust Shakespeare. So there are several words like this. I'm sure we'll encounter others. Okay, next line.
Broke in voice and his function suiting.
Here we go. Regular feminine ending. Here we go again.
With forms to his conceit, and all for nothing.
Regular feminine ending, and then we get
For Hecuba.
and beat, right? Right? I mean, you imagine the possibilities. You're the actor of Hamlet. You get to that like mini climax in the speech, and all for nothing for Hecuba. Something's going on. Something's going on in this guy. He's processing. Okay, take the next one.
Okay. What's Hecuba to him or he to Hecuba?
Okay, regular feminine. Now, we're getting a lot of feminine endings out of Hamlet. You're the actor of Hamlet. What do you suppose is going on here? It's not random. It's not because Shakespeare just decided I have to use this word. And darn it, there's another 11-syllable line. Something's up. There's no wrong answer. But as an actor, you would note it and you would want to do something with it. What might be going on here?
He's not sure.
I have heard, and the best explanation for me has always been that a preponderance of feminine endings are indicators. When we're disrupting the pulse, we're messing with the pulse to demonstrate a fractured way of thinking, distraction at a certain level, right? It's not controlled. It's not just keep the same old beat. Keep getting those evidence. That is the question. Okay. Where were we? Or he to Hecuba, right? Who's next?
That he should weep for her. What would he do?
Okay, that's good. That hangs, even though it's like two sentences in that one line. We're completing one and beginning another. But would, we can get some mileage out of there, right? We just saw what this actor did do, the player king. We just saw what he did do. What would he do? What would he do if his cause were, so that operates for us.
And he the motive and the cue for passion.
There's another one. Another regular feminine ending.
That I have.
But put the rhythm on it.
That I have.
You start with the unstressed. That I
That
have.
I have. Okay. That I have. He would drown the stage with tears.
That's right. Okay. And by the way, just a little side note here. Generally speaking, when I'm coaching up people on Shakespeare, I say avoid pronouns. You don't want to stress pronouns. We're really fond of that as English speakers. Shakespeare will rarely drop one into a stress position. That's one, right? Because he's setting up a specific contrast. What would he do had he the blah, 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 blah that I have. He would drown the stage in tears. That I have, he would drown the stage with tears. Next.
And cleave the general ear with borrowed speech.
So general can be elided with no disruption to sense.
Make mad the guilty and appall the free.
Good?
Confound the ignorant and amaze indeed.
Okay, this one's tricky. Yeah, confound the ignorant. That's regular up until there. If we give ignorant its full value, confound. And by the way, when I'm working on Shakespeare, acting or directing, I'm doing this all the time. I'm counting to 10 all the time. Confound the ignorant and appall the free. Boy, that one's wacky. See, this may very well be a good example of the kind of a line that you scan it, you go, ooh, that's not right, and then you dig into it for about 30 seconds and you see whether this unlocks it or anything else, and then you just say, yeah, the heck with it. The heck you with it. I'm going to speak it so it makes sense. Because I don't know that you can get out of this one. Anybody can you scan your way out of this? Confound the ignorant and amaze. Ignorant?
Ignorant. Confound the ignorant and amaze indeed. That's the best I think. That's the
Yeah, see, I don't like it because what it does is it messes with a part of the line that's regular up to that point. So what I say is at that point you go, I tried.
And it also takes away a chewable word too when you're confounding ignorance.
Yes. But that line is problematic. Okay, the very faculties of eyes and ears. So we end with a regular. Okay, good. Let's turn the page and we'll start to wind this down and we'll look at this Richard II speech because there's something going on at the end of this speech that I really want us to have a good look at. With apologies to Hamlet and King Lear and Macbeth and I don't know who else belongs in the conversation. This guy, this is the single greatest role ever written in the English language. It's spectacular. I mean, it's ridiculous. Every time he opens his mouth, something miraculous comes out. And the progress of the play is so beautiful. It's so beautiful because he's a terrible king. He's horrible. He is King Butthead the First. He's bad. And he's not even subtle about it, right? And then he robs, John of Gaunt, this great, aged, venerable servant of the realm. John of Gaunt dies and Richard just grabs all of his money and property. He's already banished his son, Bolingbroke. Richard grabs all of his stuff and says, oh good, now I have funding to go fight this useless war against some Irish upstarts. Bad king. But the play has a central metaphor, which is this idea of buckets in a well, 2 buckets. And as one goes up, the other goes down. So as Bolingbroke, when he comes back from banishment, as he ascends, Richard does this. And as Richard loses all the things that make him a king, he becomes a man. He becomes a man worthy of our respect. And he concludes the play all by himself in prison. I have been studying how I may compare this prison where I live unto the world. It's the only time in the play that he is speaking without an audience. It's kind of beautiful. He's always performing, except there. And he kind of figures it out. He kind of gets it, which is why somebody has to come in and, right? That's what you get. That's what you get for figuring something out in Shakespeare. Okay, it's a beautiful role. Now this just to give you a little context here. Richard has returned from his Irish war. So he is on the shore of Britain. What he has found is that all of the people that were loyal to him have now gone over to Bolingbroke. Richard's he's not dumb. He realizes that for all intents and purposes, he's no longer the king. Now, one of the members of his now small entourage is his cousin, O'Merle. And O'Merle's kind of a rah-rah guy. He's kind of a cheerleader, you know, like, hey, buck up. You know, we'll still get out of this. And Richard says, of comfort, no man speak. That's where this begins. But this is the heart of it. Okay. This play is it's not entirely written in verse, but more of it is verse than most plays. I think maybe he did write one play that was all verse. I can't think of which one it might have been. But the verse is pretty regular here. All right, so let's do our thing. Let's add a wrinkle. Now, what I want you to do as we go around the room here, scan the line that belongs to you, then take a moment and then recite it in more of a performance mode. Now you're letting loose with the second iteration, you're turning loose of the scansion pattern, and now you're making sense of it, and do it in a way that I hear very clearly where you believe the primary stress ought to be. Okay, you're first up.
For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground.
Okay, good. Yeah, okay, go ahead.
For God's sake, let us sit upon the ground.
Okay, where did you intend the primary stress?
I front-loaded it.
Okay. Now I still think you gave me a big push on sake. I think God's sake is probably better for us.
Okay.
And by the way, I mean that's okay. The unstressed. Say it this way. Your task is to maintain integrity within each metrical foot. If the unstressed of one foot is actually equal to or higher than the stress of another foot, that's okay. That's okay. For God's sake. So that's where you want it. On that, okay, that's fine. That's fine. Okay, second one.
Okay. And tells sad stories of the death of kings.
Okay, good. Okay, now in a more sensible way, and let me hear the primary stress.
And tells sad stories of the death of kings.
Yeah, but now we're that's fine. Okay, but now say it so that you're playing the sense and not the scansion. Right?
Mm-hmm. And tells I can't look at it. And tells sad stories of the death of kings.
Okay, good. Good. See but that's right. See, once you do your scansion due diligence and you determine it's a regular line, then you can go and you can speak it. But now you know that death and tell sad stories of the death of kings. If you decide that's where I want my number one stress to land, then that's what you light up when you say the line. Okay, next. What is your name, please?
Alyssa.
Alyssa. Okay, go ahead.
How some have been deposed, some slain in war.
Okay, good. Good. Now for sense.
How some have been deposed, some slain in war.
That's good. That was good. I like that. Yeah. So, okay, we're gonna talk about kings in the aggregate. So some actually gets us some mileage there. And then I heard if some was number one, then war was number two. I heard emphasis on that as well. That's fine. You know, I mean, you can technically do 1 and 1A if you want. I mean, but again, long division. You know, make sure we got all 5 marked out.
Some haunted by the ghost they have deposed. Some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. This line troubles me a little bit. And I'll tell you why. It's because of what I just said about how when Shakespeare repeats something, he generally wants the modification emphasized. Every fiber of my being wants to lean on they in that line.
Okay.
It's not available. It's not in a stressed position. But doesn't that make better sense? Some have been deposed. Some slain in war. Some haunted by the ghosts they have deposed.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You know. But in terms of always try to make the line work as a regular line, and you did. Okay.
Some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed.
Okay.
Some poisoned by their wives, some sleeping killed.
Yeah, that's fine. Where did you intend the primary stress? This line's tricky. It's hard to, I mean, there's so many operative things going on.
Yeah, it bounces around. How they were killed. Some poisoned by their wives. It seems weird to say to do poisoned, and it seems like it should be wives. If they were poisoned by their wives.
It's good.
And some
Sleeping.
killed.
Right. And killed doesn't need it. Killed does not need to be lifted. We already know this is all about killing.
Well, and that goes along with the some have been deposed, they have deposed, and then wives. It's almost like you're combining the three murderers together.
Okay, those that do the killing
Yeah.
are being outed a little bit. Okay.
All murdered for within the hollow crown.
Okay.
Huh? Missed the action. Okay. It sounds like an accent.
Now for sense.
All murdered for within the hollow crown.
Okay, yeah, and that's fine because hollow crown's gonna wrap over to the next line. I would argue that the first metrical foot of this line was a spondon. I don't see how you avoid that.
All murdered.
I don't see how you avoid that. I mean that seems to be like the essence of the speech. However, kings left this earth, all murdered. He's going on to explain that.
Well, and he's been using some, and now he said all.
Right, all murdered, and yeah, sure, because his audience here, I mean, heads should be turning at that point. What do you mean? King so and so died in his sleep. Richard's going on to make this good. We're not there yet. Okay, for within the hollow crown, right?
That rounds the mortal temples of a king.
Okay, good. Where do we want the stress here?
I've been thinking about it. That rounds the mortal temples of a king.
Where were you intending your primary stress to?
As it would be mortal and king.
I think that's right. I think those are your two best options there. Okay, all right. I want to go to the last line of the speech here. And this is my final salvo here in terms of driving home the point that the purpose of scansion is not to funnel you into a particular way of saying a line. And here's what I mean. Okay. Do us a scan the line for me. Do the scansion.
How can you say to me, I am a king?
Right? Perfectly regular, iambic pentameter, masculine ending. All right, now John is going to perform this line for us. And John, okay.
How can you say? How can you say to me, I am a king?
That's good. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Now that makes sense, right? Isn't that a defensible choice? How can you? I mean, how could you? Why would you? Why did you? Why do you keep calling me king? Why do you keep kneeling? Why do you keep taking your hats off? Can't you see I have been reduced and am no longer? Okay. That's beautiful. That's a working choice. You get to do it. Oops, nope, that's not right. That's not what I want. Now you're going to say the line, and that's the primary stress.
How can you say to me, I am a king?
Yeah, that's good too. Whatever you may think, whatever you may hold in your hearts, how can you say to me, I am a king? It's different. It's different. You see where this is headed?
How can you say to me, I am a king?
There it is. Shakespeare put it there. He put it in the stress position. How can you say to me, can't you see what's going on with me?
How can you say to me, I am a king?
Yeah, but give me a little more flow.
How can you say to me, I am a king?
Okay, but you
wanted to go to the end.
You cheated here. You
Yes.
give me a contraction. This will work.
How can you say to me, I am a king?
You're right next to it.
How can you say to me, I am a king?
Good. So we're talking about like tenses here. We're talking about present tense as opposed to
Yeah.
I was a king. How can you say to me, I am
Got
a
it.
king? Right? Okay. And then our final option is here, of course.
How can you say to me, I am a king?
They all work, my friends. They all work. So this, to me, is what's exciting about this process. Not limiting, right? Where you land here has everything to do with what you think about the character and where he is at that point in the play, and what you and your director determine through the process of rehearsal moves us forward the most efficiently. But they all work. Won't be like that in every line, in every speech. Some lines, are more obvious than others, but that's a beauty. That's a beauty, because they all do different things. They all do different things. Okay. Any questions about anything we've covered?
What is iambic pentameter?
Yeah.
Who was Shakespeare?
Yeah.
And what's going to be on the test?
Mentioning this Shakespeare guy. Are we supposed to know?
I once had a job interview for something that had nothing to do with the theater, and somewhere on my resume, I guess, some of my prior Shakespearean experience was noted, and I guess the guy conducting the interview thought he was going to be clever, and he started the interview by saying, "So, who wrote Shakespeare's plays?" I said, "Are you really asking?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "Well, Shakespeare wrote Shakespeare's plays. Let me tell you about people who say otherwise." I got that job. All right. Okay. Thanks very much. Thanks for participating.
I did have one question.
Yes,
Just
please.
dawned on me. So, as you mentioned, basically everybody wrote an iambic pentameter at a time. When did it move away?
Well, that's a good one. I mean, with Shakespeare.
The French kept it around for a long time.
Well, now Molière composed in, I believe he wrote in Alexandrines, which is an iambic 12-syllable line. But I mean, iambic, I guess, persisted for quite some time, but I don't know exactly. I don't know. I mean, at one point, somebody said, "Okay, we've done that." What else have you got? David Mamet was iambic.
The very first person.
Yeah, clearly no one did. Just one day, everybody decided not to write.
Yeah,
I have a theory. I'm a church musician,
Okay.
and I deal with hymnody. And in the late 19th century, you get a whole lot of hymn tunes that are in compound meters. Da 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 da, which I think reflects a culture that has developed that travels on railroads,
Wow, that's cool. That's cool.
as opposed to horse. Da, 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 da.
Clip clop of a horse.
Click clop.
Oh, I like that.
But you get compound meter. You
Yeah.
get threes.
What was the time period on that? What did you say?
Late 19th century.
I like
Train
it.
travel. And
And
occasionally
you hear that in Gilbert and Sullivan.
occasionally you get someone. I know of a specific instance. E.B. McKinney said he wrote this tune on the train, there's that rhythm. But then I think that breaks down the strength of a horse beat,
Sure.
or,
Okay. Yeah.
although the heartbeat goes on, the heartbeat has never stopped. So that's always there, but
Well, and
other external and auditory sensations.
The examples that we worked with this evening, I chose them specifically because they're mostly regular.
Yeah.
When you start to like travel through Shakespeare's dramatic output, when you start getting into the later plays, I mean, the gloves are off. I mean, you'll be hard pressed to find a regular iambic line because I don't, I think at a certain point it's like, okay, I've now laid in that expectation. Now I can start to frustrate it to dramatic effect. There's all kinds of irregularities in the later plays, but no, that's good. So the playwrights are, they're using rhythms that are familiar
Sounds
out
of
there in
life.
the world, yeah.
Of their life.
Do you think that, I know we talked about the sort of unfortunate calling of things masculine and feminine these days, but is it something as simple as additional ribs? If there's if the feminine ending has an extra syllable because they have an extra rib.
I don't know. I mean, I'm sure that that one could discover when those references, when those things came to be called.
And I guess another question would be, were they calling it that? Or is this, hundreds of years later when somebody's like, we're calling this a feminine?
It's when
Probably.
somebody was doing a dissertation.
Yeah.
and
Right.
like-
Yeah. Probably. Well,
When it get published.
when I talk about Shakespearean comedy in not too long from now, I'm going to be talking about the 5-act structure of the plays, which has nothing to do with Shakespeare. It has nothing to do with Shakespeare. I mean, an editor cut the plays into 5 acts, and it's helpful. I mean, it doesn't do us any harm, But editors were trying to track along with the Aristotelian concept of beginning, middle, and end. So they were kind of chopping the play, and the divisions make sense. But by gosh, I mean, you don't go to Hamlet expecting to get 4 intermissions, Although you might wish that were the case. In case it's really bad and they want to bug out. But I mean, for our purposes, you get Act 1 and Act 2. You get the first half of the play and the second half of the play. But these are they're not the way that these things were created. Somebody came to it later and put those things on.
They couldn't figure out Tempest that 5 4 so short.
Great. Tempest didn't even really break in.
Okay.
Thank you,
Switch
Rich.
seats.
Thank you.